And as I say, you say that that's the direction of travel, but I just don't see I don't see the.
You don't buy it. You find it kind of a stretch.
I don't buy it.
Okay.
I don't buy it.
All right. Mm-hmm.
And what you've had so far is, as I said, people who have bought this, who buy it because they're selling a very specific product, and because they are very dodgy and they are pushing an agenda. That's why they buy this. Mm-hmm. And I don't need you to comment on that or offer it. That's my argument. And these people are destabilizers for very specific reasons. And as I said, it's not in the interest of this country. I think it's in the interest of a foreign nation.
You don't really looking me in the face and calling me a destabilizer working for vested interests.
No, I said they are. I
said they are me on your program to say that to my face.
I think you might be. I can't. You say you're not, but I can't say for definite you're not. Mm-hmm. I think anybody that works for any of these institutions, anyone that's involved with like the FPRI, any of these big multinational.
Yeah, before you looked up your name, had you heard of FPRI?
Yes. All these different groups, David Horowitz Freedom Centre, Council for Foreign Relations, Atlantic Council, all these neocon warmongering organisations that have destabilised countries around the world. I mean, you mentioned the Arab Spring. I mean, the Arab Spring wasn't a spontaneous uprising. The Arab Spring was completely organised by the CIA and Mossad to destabilise these countries and destroy them. They weren't natural. They weren't spontaneous. They were controlled from Washington and Tel Aviv.
How do you know
that? Well, because of course they were. Do you think people just all of a sudden got up and started campaigning against Assad? All of the white helmets, all of these people, Libya. Look at what they did in Libya. Look at the way they got rid of Gaddafi. Isn't it funny how all the strongmen Arabs who were always opposed to Israel, Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, Assad, look at the way that the Americans funded and supported all these terrorists in Syria. You've now got an ISIS terrorist who's now the president of Syria, and everyone's celebrating it. The only bulwark against Islamic extremism in the Middle East, the only leader that fought for Christians, and he was destabilized by Israel, by the CIA, by everyone, and they got rid of Assad. Because that's what they do, because they would rather have failed states on their border than have strong countries that can actually stand up to them.
But what is your evidence?
Well, the evidence is pretty clear. You just have to listen to what Benjamin Netanyahu says at congressional meetings. You just have to listen to what Netanyahu does. Yes. All these wars tend to be involved with certain groups of people.
How the Arab Spring was perfectly non-spontaneous.
Well, because
what did Netanyahu say that led you to this belief?
Well, Netanyahu called for the overthrow of Saddam. He said that he was the biggest threat in the Middle East. It may have been the spark that started it, but I think it's pretty clear that when these things happen, the intelligence agencies then get involved. As I said, the bombing of Libya by NATO. I mean, that was kind of big in overthrowing Gaddafi, was it not? You know, that wasn't a spontaneous uprising. Was it not the NATO bombing that caused that?
You said the word spark, but you said the word spark, right? So, I mean, if you use the word spark in the context of the discussion we're having about societal uprising, then you accept that there is this important thing called the tinder or the conditions, right?
Correct.
So a spark in a soaking wet forest isn't going to light anything. You accept my point of view?
Yes, but someone still has to light the match.
And so,
if we're being blunt again about it, the Soros Foundation involved in Ukraine, Victoria Nuland, whose maiden name was, Noodleman, Anthony Blinken, Zelensky. Do you not think it's odd that all the pivotal figures involved in the Ukraine war happen to be ethnically Jewish? Does that not strike you as odd for supposedly 16 million people that the architects of the war are all ethnically Jewish?
No, I didn't observe that. But, I have written quite a lot on the Ukraine war and the causation of that. Isn't what you asked him to come on to
No,
to
but we've got onto that. And I said it's just a pattern that I see emerging with most of these conflicts. That there are certain special interests. And Grant Shapps, who was the defence secretary at the time, who wanted to put British troops on the ground in Ukraine, said that my family had to flee Russia due to anti-Semitic pogroms. Do you think there's something odd about having a defence secretary who harks back to pogroms in the 19th century as a reason to put British troops on the ground in a conflict in Eastern Europe? Is that not a bit odd? Saying as I think the notion of a coming civil war, and again, maybe this is just confirmation bias, but it'll be the same group of people who push wars in Ukraine, the same people that push wars in the Middle East. It'll be the same people who are pushing a war in Britain as well, because it's these people basically every single time.
Okay.
And my concern is that you, who have maybe innocently come to
do state your concern. Sorry,
is that you who have come to this analysis of what's going to happen will be used and exploited by this very special group of interests to push for a civil conflict in this country, which will likely be between indigenous Britons and Muslims. You saw it during the Southport riots, where they framed it as a battle between Britons and Muslims. You had gangs of Muslims with machetes. I mean, you talk about the rape gang epidemic, which is clearly real, which has clearly hurt a lot of people. Yeah, at the same time, people will piggyback on that, and they will use that to get people angry about what is happening. And as I said, I see all these people that talk about the rape gangs. It's the people who open the hen house to the fox are the very people who then turn around and offer you the solution. I just find it quite frustrating. That's all.
Okay. I'm sorry you find that frustrating. I appreciate your warning.
Okay. As I said,
I don't know really. Yeah.
Had you not thought that is it not a bit odd that all these people are just clamoring to have you on the show?
You keep saying, is it not a bit odd? Is it not a bit odd? That's not a very effective question.
Okay. Well,
you asked me to come on to speak about a bit of research that I had done and have written up, and have asked very little about that in substance, in fact, and mostly have looked at the sky or whatever it is you're looking at when your eyeballs roll up, and asked me, is it not a bit odd? And asked me to reflect on your theory. I don't care about your theory, okay? And I didn't come on to reflect on that. It would have been awesome to speak about the issue, about the issues at hand, from the perspective that I'm able to speak. But that's not what occurred.
But the only way that what you are arguing will happen is if that idea is implanted in the minds of people. I am saying, even though you're an academic and you work for King's College London, as I say, I don't buy what you're selling. I think that if there is a civil war, it will be because it has been in. You ever seen the film Inception with Leonardo DiCaprio, where they put ideas in people's head? It will only happen because it is an idea that has been put into people's head.
That's an interesting theory.
And that's it. Well, listen, Professor Betz, as you've given up an hour and 40 minutes of your time, I do appreciate you coming on. I thank you for not running off, because a lot of people sometimes will just cancel the interview and go away. I hope we've done this in good faith. I have found it exceptionally interesting. As I say, I think you have come to the conclusion with good faith, but I think a lot of bad faith actors are now involved. And again, it's up to you to decide moving forward what happens with that. Are you on social media? Do you have any books or anything that people can read or follow with your work?
I'm very easy to find through the normal routes. I write academic books. If people are interested in reading academic books, they can find them very easily through a simple Google search, or find my staff webpage. Okay, well, listen, Professor Betz, thank you so much for coming on tonight and giving up your time. My audience have certainly enjoyed it, and they value your sticking it out. It's been a marathon, so thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Good night. Bye-bye.